Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Derek, I see you're wearing your Saracens jersey.
Oh, of course, of course.
Now, you may be wondering, Stu, why are you so pessimistic about Welsh rugby? And if you watch the Ospreys versus Saracens game in the Champions Cup last round of 16, wait until the 68th minute for Duncan Taylor's try, and you'll understand perfectly what I'm talking about.
That's what actually made me really happy. I was glad that you pointed out the jersey because I just wanted to make sure that you could actually see it because clearly Reese Webb cannot. And also maybe don't take a quick line out with see if there's 8 guys wearing these jerseys within your vicinity. Quick line out is not the best idea. It's not the best option.
Yeah. I think especially as well, I think you could maybe get that away with that in an MLR team, but not against a team that's won 3 European Champions Cups. I don't think that's reasonable.
No, exactly. That's what the 3 stars are on this jersey for, the 3 Champions Cups. And that was kind of a weirdly annoying game, I think, for Saracens fans, though. That was for the most part, their execution seemed way off. Definitely not up to the standard that you're kind of used to. The Ospreys actually started really good. Their first half was incredible.
Yeah, it was just the second half, wasn't it?
The second half is where it all fell apart. You were probably still in that game too until Reese Webb decided to throw the easiest try that Duncan Taylor has and will ever score in his life.
Yeah, but I think as well as that there was a final try scored in I think it was 79th minute or so.
Yeah.
By Wilson Croft. And that was okay, now it's beyond reasonable doubt, as in, even if he hadn't thrown that pass, it's a Saracens game to win.
You play, I mean, you can say that, but you play differently depending on what the score is, right? So
yeah,
maybe Wilson Croft doesn't get into that position and stuff too. Malin's had 2 really big tries that kind of kept the Saracens in the game, even to get to that point anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Ospreys head coach says that what the Ospreys have been doing up until that game in Europe is winning the big moments. So not necessarily scoring tries, but doing things and the 2 instances were obviously the quick line out, which didn't go to plan, and well as then Malin's first try, because that was from a scrum, which the Ospreys should have won. And instead, they allowed Saracens to get over them, and the scores just went away. But anyway, let's stop talking about European rugby. Let's bring it back to North American rugby, because you said you were going to wear the Jackals hat when they won a game, and the streak is over.
Yeah, it's
1 in 22.
Yeah, Owen. Now they're 1 in 22. It's nice. About a year ago, Official League, the company, I guess, that makes a lot of the hats for the Dallas Jackals, sent me a Jackals hat. So I said I would wear it when they got their first win. I did not expect that when I made that claim that it would be against the Arrows, and I would have to talk about the Arrows losing to the Jackals while wearing a Jackals hat. But I did put up a big Arrows logo behind me now. So we still got the Arrows logo. I got to keep my word though on saying that I would wear the Jackals hat after their first win. Which, I mean, we will dive into. But on the one other side though, this is an incredibly comfortable hat. And it's actually amazing. And I do actually kind of wear it a little bit more often than I'm leading on to believe. It's actually great. So if you see some Official League stuff, I would recommend buying it because it is super comfortable, man. It's it's a legit great hat. I always like the Jackals color scheme. I think they have some of the best branding in the league too. It's just I didn't want to wear the hat to talk about the Arrows losing though.
Yeah.
But now I have to.
I know. So let's get into it. Okay. So we've talked about the Arrows injury woes, how they haven't really been performing that well this season, which you could say, oh, that's due to injury, or it's just due to the attack plan not coming together. It's due to gaps in their defense. But from a Dallas perspective, you get the sense that if Dallas couldn't win this game, they were never going to win any game in MLR. I mean, the Arrows coming into this lineup, first of all, they were actually able to have 23 players throughout the duration of the game, but they still had an injury list with 13 names on it, one of which is Micah Torrance-Reid, who unfortunately has now flown back to New Zealand to get surgery on his ACL, which he tore. So he is out for the season, unfortunately. We're wishing Micah Torrance-Reid, the swiftest of recoveries. We hope to see him playing again soon. But that's the situation. It's been 22 matches without a win. In the past 2 games, you've been within 3 points against the Hounds. You've been within 1 point against New England. And now you're up against a team that is basically being held together by duct tape. If you cannot win this game, maybe join Super Rugby's America. I don't know what to say. Well, to me, most of the squad is Argentinian, so
well, they did end up winning the game though. So I mean, that's the positive. Yeah, I don't know, like. It's obviously a really cool moment. I guess, like, why don't we talk about the Jackals for a minute first before we dive into the Arrows and that? But like, it's obviously like you can really see at the end of that game the emotion on the on the coaches, on the players, on a lot of the fans. It's obviously been a very difficult first year and a bit of their franchise, not just for like the on-field performance, but like they had that freak accident with the walkway last year too, right? Like they had I believe like they were going to join a year earlier, and then they had to back out due to, I guess, some COVID stuff or things related to COVID, like just the idea of not playing during that 2021 season. But so I mean, if you're a Jackals fan, like this team has really been in Major League Rugby for like a year and a third, I guess, but you've been through a lot at this point, right? So like you can tell like that win meant a lot to everybody, right, in that organization. It's cool to kind of see, like, I think a guy like Sam Gala, who has like their first overall draft pick this year, right, who has been absolutely outstanding. And he got to, he broke through, just absolutely shredded a tackle from Mitch Eady, and then ran in and scored a try under the post to get the Jackals on the board and kind of get their ball rolling. Yeah, like he's been a constant figure in the MLR team of the weeks this year, right? So that pick's working out outstanding for them. They obviously have a whole bunch of other players that have been really committed to a team that has, at least on the pitch, been struggling a lot. I thought, to give the Canadian spin on this, I thought Liam Murray was excellent. He had a couple really big hits in this game. He made a lot of tackles, good work rate. His scrummaging was good. This was a pretty solid performance from Liam Murray leading up to this win. And obviously, DeWald Kotze had what eventually would turn out to be the game-winning try.
Yeah.
Right? So that was, kind of nicely set up. It was a really good kick from Elias to pin the Arrows deep in their own end. And it was a good maul from the Jackals, and Kotze, obviously being the hooker, was the beneficiary of that. Lots of Canadians scored try across the MLR this weekend. Unfortunately, one of them was against the Arrows, which I always feel a little bit more conflicted about. They're cool, but also annoying at the same time. Right. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I think we kind of maybe have to dissect the Arrows side of this a little bit, but I think the Jackals just, I mean, they've been through a lot, their fans and everything. Like, I think it sucks that the team that we cheer for was on the wrong end of the first loss, or on the wrong end of their Jackals' first win, excuse me. But it's nobody wants 0-16 teams. Like, no one wants that. So it's good to see the Jackals finally, get this monkey off their back and get into the win column.
Well, I
Anything to
mean,
add, or should we dissect this Arrows team right now?
so I want to mention like Adrian Boyson for
Mm,
Dallas as well. To put in comparison
wow,
to
yeah, great game.
uh, he had a great 10 ball carries, 80 carry meters. The most tackles made of the Jackals were 21. To put that in comparison, James O'Neill had the most tackles for Toronto, and that was only 13.
Yeah, it's because
So
Toronto had the ball the whole game.
that is true. Yeah. And okay, so let's talk about that because it seems as though it's like well, basically, you can put on any episode of the Rouge Rugby from the past year or so talking about the Arrows and their inability to convert opportunities in the 22 into points. They have the possession, they have the territory, they just don't have the proof at the end of it.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, sorry.
frustrating beyond belief.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is frustrating. It's well, like even a game like this too. And I think I really did want to start the podcast by talking a little bit about the Jackals here because like I don't want to take away from the win at all because it's obviously a big moment for that franchise. But at the same time, I know I'm not wearing my Arrows cap technically, but if I may switch it mentally, to put the Arrows cap and the Arrows glasses back on, the Arrows could have won this game. Like
Absolutely.
there's no
Absolutely.
reason that they couldn't have won this game. And to be honest too, like that's not just the play at the end of the game, which I think was completely the right decision. Maybe we can talk about that in a minute. But it's not just the play at the end of the game where they didn't put the maul through, or so they get the line out 5 meters out. They go to the drive. The line ball goes to run ball. They try the driving maul, and Gomez Vara gets his hands on the ball. Maul comes down. Ball's held up. Game's over. Right. And it's obviously, that's obviously a situation which is a prime opportunity to score tries that they fell short on. But at the same time, it's like those opportunities present themselves constantly throughout the match too.
Yeah.
Um, and it seems like it's definitely been like a trend with this team, right? Is that, you know, we can kind of talk about sometimes some of like the little things, like there's the little set piece execution errors or handling errors, or even just Dallas's defense, to their credit, I think they had like 13 turnovers in this game. I wonder how much
Yeah.
of those were inside the 22. It feels like a lot of
Yeah.
them were, right? And like for whatever reason, it's like the Arrows again, and I kind of like look back on it. I think it's with the exception of the game against New York, I believe, because the
Yeah.
game against New York, they got killed.
Yes.
But that game against New York, I think the Arrows have had the majority of territory possession in like most of the games they played this year.
Yeah.
And this game's no exception, right? But it seems like they can constantly do the right things to get in the right areas of the park. And
Yeah.
then once they're in the 22, there's some sort of execution error. And it just feels like they're lacking like some sort of like killer instinct to just
Yeah.
finish off opportunities. And like ultimately, the biggest issue with this team right now is that they can't score. Right.
Yeah.
And, right now they have 7 tries in 6 games, and Joe Mono has 7 tries in 6 games
Yeah.
by himself. Right. 3 of those were against the Arrows, but like that's like the leading try scorers in the league right now are keeping pace with the entire Toronto Arrows team. I think
Yeah.
Hadding after that has 6.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's like and obviously the Arrows are last in points for in the league. But so it's like that. I don't know. That's I guess the biggest problem right now.
Yeah. But this seems to be a
It's
continuation of issues from last year, as I mentioned. And so especially when we've been, talking to Bill Webb, Tim Matthews, and they're saying that, okay, we brought in these, front row players and we brought in like these foreign internationals because the Arrows have not been able to do this. They've not been like big enough, or they've not been powerful enough to make that final like push in the 22 into points. And we've seen it throughout last season, both away and at home. And then, so if you brought in these new guys and the problems are still persisting, I'm not putting like the finger at like Pete Smith and say you've got to sort this out right now. I mean, I kind of am, but more in the sense of, is there something else that isn't being addressed? Is there something that we're not seeing that is affecting the players? Because, and obviously you can say like, okay, it's injuries because, the guys that we want to have as like the starting 15, 12 of them are currently on the bench. One of them has had to fly back to his homeland to get surgery. And then it's like the other question that has been brought up is like, well, if these guys are getting injured and they're not able to play, then do we need to focus on like a different style of playing? Now, again, I'm not an attack coach. I'm not a strength and conditioning coach. I'm not a physiotherapist. At most, I'm an armchair, any one of those. I'm not saying I know the answer. Yes, exactly. But that's the thing.
This is the literal medium where people that have no idea what they are talking about are allowed to yell things into a microphone and people listen to it.
I think we need to have like a microgram of knowing what we're talking about. Okay, so rugby is played with 15 players, I guess.
You genuinely don't need to know anything. We could have never watched rugby before, and there's nothing stopping us from doing this.
True, but I think for our like listeners and for like the people who actually enjoy this podcast, we need to have some level of understanding of what we're talking about. But again, rugby is a very complex thing. It's not like games aren't won or lost because of one player. It's like a team effort, and that includes not only the like players, but like the coaching team, the background team, like the front of house staff. Every part of that builds into the Arrows. And I'm not saying ticket sales are deciding like whether the Arrows are conceding tries or not, but I feel as though like, and something isn't being addressed, something isn't being found. And if that thing can be found, or those things can be found, then the Arrows can still have the time to like turn the season around. Maybe it's not playing at home, which they because we're at the end of the road trip, and finally the Arrows will be coming back to York Lions Stadium. I'm hoping that the home environment, I believe they have 3 games at home.
Yeah, you remember,
then they have a bye
against though, right?
Yeah, it's just like the highest ranking teams in the East and West. Yeah. So
New York, New England, and then Seattle at home.
Those
they're
minnows.
At home, but it's a bit. They're at home, but they get 3 of the best teams in the league. So
if Seattle could find it within their hearts to fly out the morning of their game,
that would be something. If the Arrows end that's the revenge.
Hey, they ended the streak last year.
I was gonna say that's the rugby gods making up. That'll be the rugby gods making up for being Dallas's first win. The Arrows get to end Seattle's. What would they be by that time? 8-0, 9-0? What would they be at that point in the season if they were undefeated?
Seattle is the 3rd team, so I think it'd be 9. I think that would
in O. The Arrows can put a 1 after that. I think there's I don't know. I think there's a couple things with that. With what you were saying in general there. The injury situation, first of all, obviously sucks. There's an entire rugby league team worth of players sitting on the on injured list. Right. And as we mentioned last week, and I think you actually just mentioned it like 30 seconds ago or whatever, like a lot of them should start or would start, or at the very least would give Pete Smith something to think about when he's making the lineup for the match day. The weird flip side of this, though, if we're looking at this game at the very least, anyways, all the guys that they have called up have been really good.
Yes, that is something like positive.
Yeah, like genuinely, like Hank Stevenson was unbelievable in this game. He had a ton of tackles, and then like he was at what felt like every breakdown.
Yeah.
Every time an arrow got tackled, I think I saw a 4 just flying over the ruck. Um, right. And that was great to see. Brendan Black, I know he's going back, he's going to play sevens with the U23 team
Yeah.
after this now, but like Black in his 2 games, just literally being 18 years old, being the youngest player ever in MLR, being straight up just thrown to the fire in his first 2 MLR games. And yeah, he's been good, man. He did well, like, fielding kicks. He did well returning kicks. He made good decisions on when to kick, when to run back a counterattack. Some good passing. Deshaun Bowen came in the game. He had a lot of really good kick chases, made a couple tackles, had some nice runs. He actually drew the penalty at the end of the game to even give the Arrows that chance to win at the end.
Yeah.
So that was a Juan Pablo Zeiss hit him with a high tackle after he did a nice little cutback move, but ended up drawing that penalty, right? So Deshaun Bowen did that. Dawson Fatorik had like a 50 plus meter run, like just one line break that he kind of busted out. So like that was great. Even like some of the guys that maybe didn't start week 1 but have been getting increased time, like Owen Rutten's been really good during this injury, the spike in basically half the team being injured right now. That's kind of like the weird thing with the injuries is the guys that are coming in. I don't like if it's just like the hunger is there, right? To like you want to make the best out of your first shot at playing MLR games, right?
Yeah.
But the guys, like the biggest positive I think the Arrows can take from this game was like the development system is clearly doing a hell of a job.
Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, like
all of these
the
guys
Arrows
can play.
Senior Academy, the Pacific Pride, I guess the
Dude, they were
Sevens series as well.
Yeah, like the some of these new guys have legit been some of the best players on the team. Stevenson, I think was probably legitimately like one of the Arrows top 5 best players in this game. Like obviously there was a lot of guys, well, a handful of guys had really good had good games too, but
but to me, well, actually, you mentioned a handful of guys that have been doing well. They obviously got to mention the guy that was selected for the MLR first 15 of the week, Ramon Ayaza.
He's been great this year.
He is fighting for that Chilean starting jersey, which will actually have a number 2 on its back.
No, I think he plays better with a 5. Just keep him in 5.
Well, there's also the man with no number, Fabian Goodall, who had like a couple of great breaks.
Just give him the ball and he like mashes dudes. Speaking of just mashing people, Luani Faliva, just absolutely lit up Alejandro Torres. That was probably the best. That was my favorite part of the whole game. I was hoping it wouldn't be my favorite part of the whole game, but as the result of the way it ended up being my favorite part of the whole game.
Also got to mention the try scorer, Mr. Ross Brody. The boss.
Yeah, back-to-back games with a try too. That's really good. Brody's been good. I think Brody Malcolm Black as a combination has been really good. Just like I think I've said, it's like they've been controlling the territory really well, and like I don't know, like it's one of those things where when I'm watching this team, what I see, like, and I know like you were just kind of saying like there seems to be like just something missing, and like I don't know, like I think to me it's like, to borrow a term from the most popular sport in our country, it seems like they're just kind of gripping their sticks too tight, right? Like they're trying. I don't want to say they're trying too hard, but they're just trying like a little too much to make something happen that might not necessarily be there. You don't necessarily need to offload that ball. You know what I mean? Like you don't necessarily need to try to pass to the winger that's got nowhere to go. Right.
Well, it's like what I was saying last week. It's like that calmness, that level-headedness. That hasn't been there. Because then you can be like, okay, you can take the ball into contact. You can go to ground. And yeah, sure, you may concede a penalty from a turnover. That did happen multiple times. But if you're the one making the break and you're waiting and you need, reinforcements to get behind you, offloading isn't going to help. And, just keep it calm. Just keep talking to one another. It doesn't matter what the other guy's here. It's like
and I think that's like, that to me seems part of it, because like, we're kind of like, you were kind of like touching on like the attack and stuff. And it's like, I mean, maybe you kind of got to simplify the attack, because you basically have a carousel of players coming in and out of the lineup constantly. Right. So, and a lot of these, so maybe like you got to do a little bit more to make sure you can work on like the cohesion, or maybe you got to simplify things a little bit just to kind of make it work with, I mean, we talked about a game last week where they had a forward playing center, right? Like, you got to come up with something to make that attack work. But I think like watching this game, and it's like strategically, like the Arrows kind of played this game how I would want them to play the game. Really, it's like, obviously all the injuries and stuff. Yeah, play for territory, right? Yeah. Like I think like that works, and it's like the Arrows in this game, they had I thought, as I said, I thought Brody, Malcolm, Black really good at the kicking game. And they did a really good job helping the Arrows control territory, putting them in the right parts of the park, especially leading up to like the last phases of the game. And I think like when we look at, I'll get your opinion on this, because obviously this was a talking point on social media after.
Yeah,
I think in the final minutes of the game, like, to me, I think the Arrows played it strategically perfectly.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think it was, the Jackals kick the ball back to you, right? Black runs it up. Mm-hmm. You run through like X amount of phases, however many it is. The forwards break down the defense. You eventually swing it out wide. Bowen draws a penalty, right? And then, I think it's the right decision to kick to the corner down by 3.
Yeah.
Right. And the only thing that falls apart is that they couldn't push them all over. Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I still think it's, I don't know. I want to know what you kind of think, because I put my opinion on the play call at the end, or the decision at the end of the game, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts on the Arrows kicking to the corner instead of just letting Malcolm, take a shot at goal and tie the game.
So, having seen the England versus Wales game from the 2015 Rugby World Cup, kicking to the corner in like the dying seconds to win the game, sure gets like the crowd up and going. But then it depends on like the choice of line out you do. So in that England game, England went for a short line out, to which Wales then flooded them, pushed them into touch. They had the line out, and then they eventually won the game.
Arrows did the same thing.
Yeah. So, well, they didn't get pushed into touch, but, it's a short line out. It didn't work out. Dallas got their hand. Yeah, Dallas got their hands on it.
Didn't even jump.
Yeah. So I think if they had gone for, a longer line out, a bigger line out, then, we could be talking about a different result. However, between going for the post and going for the line out, I think it's very easy in hindsight to say, oh, you should have gone for the post and you should tie the game. But considering earlier when Ross Brody scored that try, Sam Malcolm had the conversion and he missed it. And that's roughly in the same vein or area of where that penalty was going to be. So he may have said, like, I'm not. First of all, he also looked pretty knackered at the end of that game, pretty tired, pretty. It's like he'd had a few tackles on him, and I know he has like the heart of a lion, but maybe he needs the body of Baymax from Big Hero 6 or something. Just a bit of
Big Hero 6 ref. That's a deep cut there.
Well, that's it. He just needs a bit of time to recover, relax, and I think if like I said, if the line out had been a bit longer, we could be talking about a completely different game. The line out choice, obviously it didn't work, but if you have the opportunity to win the game at the death, then you got to go for it. You can't.
Yeah.
I think what was going through the players' minds is like, right, if we Yeah,
That's
it's
what's
like
going through the players' minds.
If we win this game, we get 4 points
Mm.
and we go back home with like the momentum in our, momentum behind us, wind in our sails.
Yeah.
If we go for the penalty, we only get 2 points. And it's a game in which we had majority possession, majority of territory, and all we can come away with is a draw. We are currently losing. So the worst case scenario is we lose. But if we have the opportunity to do better, then we're going to go for the one that gives the most reward. So yeah, I agree. I think going for the corner was the right call to make. The line-out choice was not, but
Okay.
yeah, but that's but that's a minor detail in the whole scheme of things, in the sense of you have to have that mentality of we are coming into this league, we're coming into this competition to win. We are not gonna we are not gonna climb up the table by getting draws. We are not going to improve ourselves by taking the easy way out. We have to challenge ourselves, we have to push ourselves, and more specifically push our opponents over the line so we can duck down. But it was Dallas's day. They had the ability to counter it. They did. You could see the players begging Michael Ash to just blow
That's
the
80
whistle
minutes,
already.
Right? That's 80 minutes, right? Right, sir? That's 80.
We saw the reaction. And especially when you compare it back to last year where it was the Arrows were the only team to nil, or I think the first team to nil Dallas.
It's the biggest. It was the biggest.
The biggest win margin.
I don't know if it was the first, but it was the biggest shutout victory in MLR history. 57.
No. I mean against Dallas. Like Dallas has scored points against every other team except Toronto. So Toronto was the team.
Toronto. I was gonna say I can't remember if Toronto was the first team to shut out Dallas. I thought. Yeah. Well, I guess they got us back in the end, eh?
Yeah. So maybe karma, but that is so yeah. I don't even think I mentioned it. The final score: Dallas 14, Toronto 11. A try by
everybody that's listening
Brody.
To this knows the final score.
Try by Brody, 2 pens by Malcolm. And as you mentioned, Brendan Black, he is the feature for Canada under 23 sevens in Tampa, Florida this coming weekend. So, he's heading down to the Sunshine State, whilst New York will be heading up to York Lions Stadium as the Arrows come home for what I'm sure will be a very easy game with no worries or concerns at all.
No, none. The Arrows are really good at home. James Dealey put up their home winning percentage versus their road winning percentage, and it's significantly higher. I think it was it was close to like 750, right? Like I can't remember. I should pull up his actual tweet and look at it. I'll just redirect everybody to all of James Dealey's.
Yeah, James Dealey on Instagram, MLR stats. He's the man that you need to.
It's all up there.
Give him a follow. Tell him the Rouge Rugby sent you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the scores.
I wanted to add one. This season's not over by any stretch. The Eastern Conference, if you really look at it, kind of stinks.
Yeah.
We're about to talk about the other games in the MLR right now, where there was 4 interconference matchups and the West just wiped the floor with the East. Right. So they went 4-0 for the Western Conference in this one.
Yeah.
Which ultimately means that the Arrows, despite being 1-5, are only 9 points back of a playoff spot. They play that team, the New York Ironworkers, this week. So if you get a win against them, that's going to keep the Ironworkers in check, plus move you up a little bit. But also, it's fun to keep in mind that the second place team is the NOLA Gold, who are 3-4. So currently sitting, the second place team in the Eastern Conference is below 500.
Yeah.
So there's time to make this up. But I think the Arrows got to use, 1, get healthy, and 2, we got to use this homestand to make up some ground in the standings.
Absolutely, yeah.
No matter how good these teams are that are coming in, you have to. Right. It's going to get to the now or never point.
Yeah, right. Speaking of the superior Western Conference teams, we start the weekend of round 7 with Utah versus New England. Now, this was actually pretty much like a ding-dong battle with tries being scored either side of the pitch within like a few minutes apart. But ultimately, it was the boot of Utah, getting 2 penalties that finally edged them ahead of New England. The final score, Utah 26, New England 24. Got to say as well, mentioning Canadians, Isaac Olsen scoring the 3rd try for New England as well. Darting around in the second half and able to dot that down.
That's his
Congratulations
first
to him.
MLR try, isn't it?
That is, yeah. So,
nice.
Always supporting Canadians here on the Rouge Rugby.
It's a lot of Canadian tries this week.
Oh, yes, that is. So then we have Chicago versus Houston. Consider now this is a Western Conference only clash. So, Houston started off pretty well. They getting scores on Chicago pretty early, but the Hounds were able to get themselves back into the game. And even though they just weren't able to get over that threshold, the final score, Chicago 21, Houston 28. Now comes the closest game of the round, which I always thought was going to be so I thought it was going to be Dallas versus Toronto. Then it was actually Utah versus New England. But finally, it was NOLA versus Seattle. NOLA Gold putting the Seawolves' famous seawall into question, especially in the first half. But that's the thing. If you ever count Seattle out, they're going to make you pay for it. And, they were able to come back a few tries themselves eventually, like just getting that scoreboard ticking over. The conceded right towards the end, which got NOLA back into it, but it just wasn't enough in the end. The final score, NOLA Gold 35, Seattle 36.
If only NOLA realized the game had started, they would have won.
Yeah, like the fastest try in MLR history, scored by the player of the round, Connor Moonian.
Yeah.
Now we have a game in which an Eastern team won because they were playing another Eastern team. New York, back from the bye week, back home. Hosting Rugby ATL, so ATL's chance to avenge their defeat in the Eastern Conference Eliminator of 2022, but unfortunately New York were just too powerful, and it was their 2 Canadians able to get scores, Quinn Nawadi and Andrew Coe, both dotting down for a try. Nawadi was opportunistic, to say the least, because those tackles from ATL were atrocious.
Send a bigger defender. You can't send a scrum half to tackle Quinn Nawadi, man. Like,
no.
Send somebody with a little bit more size next time. That's Nawadi's 2nd try in as many games too. Both of them in the corner, some nice finishes. This game was actually great for Canadians scoring tries in the corner. Was actually outstanding for that. I'm disappointed in Matt Heaton because he should have scored a try in the only corner that didn't have a Canadian player score a try in. Then we would have completed a nice little, I don't really know what we would have called that, a Canadian cycle. I don't know.
Well, it wasn't, it's a
Jack Shaw try too.
Yeah, Jack Shaw, that was it. I was making sure I got my names. Sometimes it's hard to track keeping all these Canadians and all these American teams.
They scored all their tries too. They scored all their tries like in a row too. So we got the natural hat trick of Canadian tries in this game.
Yeah, always great to see. But yeah, final score, New York 31, Atlanta 20. And then we come into the final game of the round, San Diego versus DC. San Diego back in the immaculate Snapdragon Stadium. And yeah, they just seem to be home advantage paying dividends to them without question. DC were able to get a few scores in, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough on the night. Well, I think night should be afternoon, really. But then again, it was it was all these Pacific times, East Coast times, are just like messing me up. Right? The final score: San Diego 48, DC 26. So DC,
any game where Ma Nanu scores a try,
scores a try especially after having received a yellow card within like the first quarter of the game as well. So redemption. Bringing it back around, but DC able to get away with a try bonus point. So, maybe obviously doesn't affect San Diego too much, but could definitely pay dividends for Old Glory come towards the end of the season. Right. So we started talking about European rugby, then American rugby. How about American rugby in Europe? Because we have the women's Canadian versus USA game, which forms the first round of the Pacific Four Series for 2023.
Being played in the lovely Pacific coast of Spain.
Yeah, it's Pacific coast of Madrid.
Yeah, the beautiful Pacific Ocean out there in Spain. Yeah. I love rugby geography. It's my favorite.
And well, South Africa's in Europe, so
yeah, exactly. And the Pacific Ocean is in Spain.
Exactly. So anyway, so this is the first round. Obviously a lot of Canadian players that were in the World Cup and the previous Pacific Four Series weren't available, and that didn't matter a damn bit because this was a slobber knocker. This was a statement delivered to Australia and New Zealand as Canada scored a total of, I believe it was 8 tries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
We're bad at geography and math.
Yeah, 8 tries. 8 tries, 5 of them converted, and the USA only able to score 1. The final score, Canada 50, USA 7. But there's something about this game that I want to talk about, and it is like the number of yellow cards that were dished out. So, and they all happened in the second half. So, the 54th minute, Sarah Svoboda gets a yellow card. She gets 10 minutes in the bin, during which the USA get the second of the. Sorry, I apologize. My scoring was bad. It's kind of 50, USA 17 because they scored 2 tries with. I believe
what's funny is I heard you say that and I was like,
you didn't correct me.
I didn't correct you because I was like, this game was so bad that I'm like, it's probably. I was like, oh yeah, Canada probably killed them by even worse than I thought because there was. I didn't. Yeah. So I mean, yes, 17, but like,
yeah.
I mean, really though, like.
Yeah, minuscule difference in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, Hope Rogers got the try after Sarah Svoboda's yellow card, and then shortly after she came back, it was Lottie Clapp getting USA's second try. But in the meantime, Tyson Bukaboom had scored a try with Sophie de Goede converting. By the way, this is the unofficial Sophie de Goede fan club. She was incredible, as always. I don't know why I was surprised. Absolutely. Best 15s player in the world at this moment in time.
I feel like you're getting very distracted from whatever point you wanted to make about these yellow cards, though.
Yeah. So obviously, yellow card, points conceded, and it didn't beat. And then we get into the final 10 minutes of the match. And Fabiola Forteza, she gets a yellow card. She's out for the remainder of the game. Then 2 minutes later, with the USA having a player advantage, Kate Zachary, the captain, she gets yellow carded. Then Autumn, I'm going to butcher this name, I'm sorry, Autumn Plicky gets a yellow card as well. So the USA go from having a player advantage to now losing 2 of their players. So they're at a player disadvantage, and it's spread out between the forwards and the backs. So, yeah, and within a minute of Autumn getting a yellow card, Gillian Borg gets the final try of the game. Sophie Goode proves she's human and misses the conversion. And I thought it was really unfair that the broadcast went straight over to like the US bench, and Zaplicki is just like crying with all the players comforting her and just making sure she's okay. And I'm like, come on, man.
It's an emotional game, Stu. It's an emotional game. You have to let it out sometimes.
I get it. I mean, obviously, this is going to be very important when it comes, especially to the WXV later this year, because the top 3 teams from the Pacific Four Series will go to WXV 1 against the top 3 teams in the Six Nations. Yeah. And I don't know if you've been watching the Six Nations, but this is a clear demonstration of how far professionalism can push you along, because Wales women are doing superbly well. And
whoa, did you just were you just optimistic about Wales?
Yeah, because in case you haven't noticed, it's only the women that are doing well in rugby. So, red or black doesn't matter to me. if they're the women playing, they're doing fantastically so far.
Yeah.
I mean, Canada coming off 2 wins, this win against the USA and last week's win against South Africa, and Wales have beaten Ireland and beaten Scotland as well. Admittedly, they are playing England next, so I'm expecting that streak to come to a abrupt halt. But I'm having the slight optimism where it comes to. I've been in Canada too long. Something's definitely wrong with me. Being optimistic of all things. Ugh.
Well,
it feels weird. Feels wrong.
Yeah, I mean, well, like you can enjoy it sometimes. It's it boosts the soul a little bit to like feel good about things sometimes too. So like just keep that in mind. This something that you can definitely feel good about though. Sophie the Goede is the best rugby player on the planet.
Yes.
This whole game is just obviously an incredible performance from her. Just dominant in breakdown, dominant making tackles. Obviously kicked the 5 conversions, tons of line breaks, tons of offloads, turned into Ricky Ray for about 3 seconds to hit a nice like 40-yard football style throw out to the wing on Poulin's second try, which feels like it shouldn't have actually been possible to do based on the way she had to pick up that ball in order to pull that off. Just an absolutely unbelievable player. And like there was a lot of really good performances in this game too. Fancy Bermudez has 3 tries in her first 2 games with the national 15s team, and this try was absolutely nasty. She stiff-armed that US defender into a different realm. Like yeah, it was incredible. Right, and a lot of great players on this team. Poulin had some nice tries, but like this was like a Sophie the Goede game, as big as a Sophie the Goede game could possibly be. She had her hand in everything, and was completely dominant. And it's one of those things where I was like, I think, as a Canadian rugby community, which includes Rugby Canada, it includes the media, fans, people that just play rugby at clubs. If we want this sport in this country to grow, we cannot waste Sophie the Goede.
No.
She genuinely, like there is not a Canadian athlete on this planet that dominates their sport like this, with the exception of maybe Connor McDavid. And that's honestly debatable. Well, maybe not debatable. Connor McDavid's pretty goddamn unreal. But it's like,
how many conversions has he kicked?
Yeah, exactly. But like that's the thing though, right? Like we'll sit and watch athletes and be like, like a guy like Shohei Ohtani or something, right? It's like he pitches and bats and fields and does everything a baseball player could possibly do, which is unusual in this day and age. And the Goede is also kind of like that, right? Like she's a forward that does a job that typically goes to backs, and she does it better than most players in the world.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As far as kicking goals go. Right. And like that's kind of part of it. And I'm like, if we want this game to grow, when's the Women's World Cup's after the Men's World Cup, right?
Yes, the next World Cup is in for the
women.
No,
I meant for the one that's in the United States. It's 2033.
Oh, 2033.
33. Yeah, so it's after the men's one, right? But it's like, okay, so the Goode's also young enough that she could probably play in that, provided provided everyone stays healthy and everything, right? And it's like there really is going to be like I don't think there's a better player to kind of build up Rugby Canada and build up the sport of rugby as far as popularity goes than her right now, than Sophie the Goede, right? You have like obviously the immense talent, right? Honestly, like the immense talent. When she's doing like interviews and stuff, right? She's articulate, she's engaging, she's entertaining in like her post-match interviews or podcasts or anything else that she does. right? And, you know, she's got a really cool story, basically being Canadian rugby royalty, with both her parents being former captains of Canadian World Cup teams, right? So you get the really cool story. You get the fact that, you know, she's really good on like the microphone and when she does media. And you also get the fact that she's the best player in the world,
Yeah.
right? That is such a unbelievably rare combination to get in a person. And like there's to me, and I'm looking at this, and you know, I'm not a marketing expert. I am far from it. But I'm like genuinely every time I watch Sophie de Goede, and I'm like, there is no reason that she cannot be on like the same level as, especially if Rugby Canada takes off, wins a World Cup. Right. There's no reason why, like, as a rugby community, we have to figure out how to get her to like the that like as far as recognizability in within Canada, like we got to get her on like the level of like Christine Sinclair or like, you know, the average NHL player or something, because like you know like Penny Alexiak, other Olympian athletes that dominate, that are household names, that are super popular within our country, like we have to get her to that level.
Yeah.
Right, the McDavids, Alexiaks, Sinclairs of our country.
Yeah.
Because like I don't, it's unbelievable what she does, and it's honestly like it almost saddens me that rugby isn't as popular in this country right now, because sports fans in Canada that love getting behind Canadian national teams, especially when they're doing well, aren't watching this.
Yeah.
Right, because it's like she might be the best I keep saying the best rugby. She might be the best athlete on the planet. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's, and I mean, maybe we're being a little hyperbolic because it's a Canadian rugby podcast and we get really
but
excited watching
I think as well, it's also the continued argument of you need to make these women professional as soon as possible.
Oh my God. Yeah. You need that. But also it's you do obviously need that.
Yeah.
Like they
but because this is the thing, is that we're very fortunate that first of all that we get to see Sophie de Goede play on the national level and be alive for it. But the thing is that with this, and you know, Karen Paquet was saying about it when we interviewed her, is that these other nations like New Zealand, Australia, England, basically all the teams in the Six Nations, with the exception of Ireland, apparently for some unknown reason, their teams are going professional, because it's like, hey, if we invest in these players and you know we give them the ability to train and prepare in a professional environment with them without them having to worry about, you know, how the bill's going to be paid.
Yeah.
You suddenly have lots of players that are playing incredibly well. How amazing would it be if we had Sophie de Goede and another player that could perform at Sophie de Goode's level on the Canadian team, and the only reason why they can't is because they have to hold down another job for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the whole talking point after you know, from the Goody and Kevin Rouet after the World Cup, right? Was, you know, more money, more resources, more games, basically more everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think a part of it too is like you probably, I don't know, are we looking at like a little bit of a chicken or the egg thing too, right? Like would more like, do we got to wait for more money to, you know, start like, you know, I guess, you know, up in some like marketing initiatives or some awareness and stuff? Or does, you know, trying to figure out like, let's pump up some like Sophie de Goede highlights on whenever like World Rugby right now, if you look at their feed, is a Sophie de Goede highlight reel right now, because
that's the thing. Get all her clips, get anything from the women's games that you can, get that sent over to like TSN and just be like, hey, because you know, well, TSN have the rights to the World Cup, and be like, hey, if you like what she's doing, or if you want to see what the men can do, then hey, there's a sport called rugby. But this is the thing, is that if we're still waiting on if the chicken or the egg's going to come first, then another nation's going to answer that question, and Canada's going to be further and further behind. We've seen this happen with the men's team. We cannot let this happen with the women. Anyway, I think we're moving off the topic of what we've been talking about.
Not really. It's the Sophie the Goode fan club. We're talking about Sophie.
That is true, yeah. But in terms of the Pacific 4 series, there will now be a break until June 28th, which will be the game between Australia and New Zealand. Yeah, we are going to have to wait a while, but it is worth it because those remaining games, which include Canada versus Australia and Canada versus New Zealand, will be played in July in Canada. Those venues and dates are yet to be confirmed, but that means that somewhere within Canadian time zones, we'll be able to see the women take on the defending world champions and one of the higher ranked teams in women's rugby. And as we said before, this is forming part of the qualification for the WXV, which will be taking place this year. Towards the end of the year, my assumption is after the Men's World Cup in France. So I believe around like November time, that is held in a neutral venue, yet to be determined as well. But I mean, you know, we've made a joke of like, oh, Spain, that Pacific nation. They've hosted Canada. They've allowed Canada to get an extra game with South Africa, you know, and this game as well. And hopefully we're getting two more. We will be getting two more Canada women's games later this year, and then three more games with the WXV. So it's going to be very interesting to watch and see how it develops.
I think even circling back to what we were just talking about, though, like if Canada, the Canadian women's 15s team is going to play, 2 home games in Canada, regardless of what city that's in, Sophie the Goode's face should be on literally everything.
Yeah.
And I know that there's other players on the team that you could probably also use to market the team. But yeah, and you could, but like you're not going to have the best player in the world very often on a Canadian rugby team. So you got to take advantage of it, man. And it's like, if that game's in Vancouver, there should be Rugby Canada ads or billboards with Sophie the Goode's face on it in Vancouver. If it's in Toronto, should be at Young Dundas Square lit up. That's if you like, you gotta. I don't know.
We gotta get it out.
I feel like we can't waste it. I don't know.
Stop waiting for the chicken and the egg and raise your own, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're moving on. So we've been to North America, we've been to Europe. How about Asia, where we have the latest leg of the World Seven Series? We are back to Hong Kong for both the men's and women's sevens.
Yeah.
And, men's sevens, they needed to be doing a job, and unfortunately, it's just not coming to them. In the pool stage, they had a 17-7 loss to Argentina, a 42-7 loss to Fiji, and a 29-5 loss to Samoa. So they don't even make it into the knockout round for the Cup. And they open that for the 9th place listing with a 17-0 loss to Ireland. They score a 19-12 win over Japan before conceding a 17-7 loss to Hong Kong, China, and the men's sevens have finished 14th. Now, in the men's standings, they are currently the 14th place team on 22 points. They are clear of Japan, who is in the 15th of the regular teams and 16th overall. But they are now a solid 18 points away from the safety zone of 11, which is currently held by Spain. It's between Spain and Uruguay of who looks to be avoiding that elimination pool stage. They do have another tournament before Toulouse. That's in Singapore. That will be coming up this coming weekend, available on CBC and CBC Gem. Before that tournament in Toulouse, and at the conclusion of that tournament, that will decide if Canada will be in the playoff between the 12th, 13th, and 14th, and the winner of the Challenger Series of 2023. So that's something that hopefully we want to see the result, but they really need to be pulling out all the stops now in Singapore and Toulouse. On to the women, and it's a bit more positive. So we start off with a 0-5 loss to Great Britain, but then a 22-5 win over Hong Kong, China, before a 46-0 loss to New Zealand. They then progress onto the Cup stages, which they begin with a 45-5 loss to New Zealand, followed by a 12-7 win over the USA, before concluding their tournament with a 22-12 loss to France, placing 6th overall. Now, obviously, the women's standings don't mean much because there isn't a terms of elimination. However, it was announced that the teams have all been made for the qualification for Paris 2024. So New Zealand, Australia, the USA, and I believe Ireland have all qualified. France technically are 4th, however, they are hosts, so they also automatically qualify. So, and it was announced earlier this week that it will be Langford in British Columbia that will be hosting the Rugby America North Sevens, and that will be acting as a qualifier for the men's and women's positions for the Olympics. Now, with the USA automatically qualifying, they will not be taking part in that tournament. So that should leave a clear path for the women's team to hopefully qualify. For the men's, it's a bit more of a challenge because it currently stands that the men's USA team are 9th and therefore out of the qualification for automatically qualifying from the 7 series. So it looks like the men and the USA men's and Canada men's will both be entering that round 7s tournament. Only the top team will qualify for the Olympics, and the 2nd and 3rd ranked teams will be progressing to a knockout tournament, which will be held in 2024 at a later date. So, a lot of rugby happening and a lot of rugby yet to come. Derek, we are now at round 8. And we are here to make our predictions. First up, New England versus Chicago. Who do you have?
New England. New England. Although Chicago's in the West, so who knows?
Mm-hmm. All right. And I will... You know, I'm going to be picking New England as well. I know their home record hasn't been, as thrilling as it has been in previous years, but, they've at least been winning, even if it is only by 1 or 2 points. So, a win's a win.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Toronto versus New York. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, Derek, and say that you'd be picking a team with Canadians in it.
Oh,
but which one are you going to pick?
That's a good call. Yeah, New York, obviously, they're playing pretty well. They had a couple really nice Canadian tries. They had really nice black jerseys on, but they need black shorts to make it work. And because they don't have the black shorts to make the nice black jersey work and actually make it look good from head to toe, you got to stick with Toronto.
And
it's also the first home game, so Toronto.
That as well. But this is the thing with Toronto and New York, is that whoever wins the first encounter loses the second encounter. And New York won the first match against Toronto, which therefore means that Toronto's going to win the second match. Yeah. So Toronto's going to win this game. So I'm picking Toronto.
It's just science at this point.
It's science, it's maths, it's physics, it's biology, it's chemistry, it's English literature, it's algebra, it's all the subjects.
Yeah. Anyway. Sorry, Quinn and Andrew, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah. Okay, now we have another All Eastern clash as Atlanta versus DC. Both teams coming off a loss in round 7. Who do you have?
Oh man.
And this is held at Silverbacks Park.
Yeah. That's a tough one. Both teams seem pretty even. I think I might lean Atlanta just because they're at home and for no real other reason.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm gonna go with the team that's ranked higher, based only because they've got more bonus points. I'm gonna go with DC. Also, I think that this game could go either way, so I think it's fair enough that one of us picks one team and one of us picks the other. Next up, it seems to be. I think it's New England versus Chicago was the only cross-conference game because next up we have Houston versus Utah.
Oh
And
man,
and
Utah
let's see.
playing well, man. Little two
Well,
games.
Houston are playing well as
Houston,
well.
yeah, Houston's
So
been playing well all season. Um, man, Houston's been really good though. Um, I think what's Houston's only loss is to Seattle, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's you know what? I think I'll do the same thing, man. I think I'm just gonna keep backing the home team a little bit this week.
All right.
I'll take Houston.
Okay. I am not gonna follow what's it. So actually, hmm. No,
Oh, you think?
I'll pick Houston as well.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
All right.
and that
You know
leaves
what that
us with
means? That means Utah wins for sure.
yeah, probably. Okay, and finally we have Seattle versus San Diego, and
Oh, this is a
San
big one.
Diego have only lost once this season. Seattle have not lost a game yet, and yet, saying all that, they are both on the same number of points, 26 each.
Yeah.
It is
San Diego
it's tough at the
scores at
top.
will. Um, yeah, San Diego scores at will. I know what you said, like, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes ago, whenever it would have been, that it'd be super cool to see the Arrows and Seattle's unbeaten streak. Um, but at the same time, I'm not sure it's gonna get that far.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna these games are always fun. San Diego, Seattle's always got a little extra spice to it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go San Diego though.
Mm.
Been
So I
a good week for red and black teams.
yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, well,
even though I picked Utah to
yeah,
lose, but whatever.
we seem to be going on like opposing threads because you've picked a home team for the last two games,
Yeah,
and I picked away, and I'm gonna do the reverse. I think this is similar to Atlanta versus DC. I think it's going to be a great clash,
definitely good. Yeah.
and I think the winner will be the fans. Maybe not the fans
Yeah.
of one of the teams, but fans of rugby in general. So I am going to pick Seattle. And that leaves us with the final games. Going over again is New England versus Chicago, Toronto versus New York, Atlanta versus DC, Houston versus Utah, and Seattle versus San Diego. And you can watch those MLR games on the Rugby Network. The Arrows game will be available on TSN2, TSN.ca, and TSN app. As mentioned before, the World 7 Series continues this weekend in Singapore and is available on CBC and CBC Gem. We are also into the quarterfinals of the Champions and Challenge Cup in Europe, and you can watch those games on epcrugby.tv. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more episodes as well as our written pieces on our new website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast, as well as extra interviews and players and coaches. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all of our videos. We are also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at The Rouge Rugby. But Derek, if the fine people want to find you specifically, where can they do so on social media?
Yeah, you can find me at Brissette the Jet across all social media platforms. You could also find me at York Lions Stadium this Saturday at 4 o'clock, probably well before 4 o'clock because I'm going to be there way before kickoff. But you get the idea.
And I will also be at York Lions Stadium before and after the game.
Yeah,
and you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.